My name is Lorraine Hale. I'm 32 years old, and for the past year, I've been quietly living someone else's life. I work as a senior software developer for a major tech company based in Austin, Texas. On paper, it's a dream setup: competitive salary, solid benefits, and fully remote. I work from a small home office in my 2-bedroom apartment, one room for living, one room for code, deadlines, and the illusion of control. What no one at work sees is that my remote flexibility has been mistaken by my family as permanent availability. They don't say it outright. They never do. They just assume. Assume I can watch the kids for a bit. Assume I don't mind last-minute drop-offs. Assume my deadlines are optional. Assume my life is empty because I don't have children of my own. My parents are retired, living comfortably in San Antonio, about an hour and a half away. They raised 2 daughters, me, the responsible one, and my older sister Veronica, who has always lived as if consequences were negotiable. Veronica is 37. She lives in Austin too, in a rented townhouse in North Austin. She has 3 children, Cameron, 9, Lily, 7, and Oliver, 6. Their father, her ex-husband, pays alimony and child support. She works part-time at a marketing agency downtown, roughly 20 hours a week. The rest of her time? Dating, yoga, brunch, self-care, and leaving her kids with me. At first, it was occasional. A date here, a girls' night there. I didn't mind then. I'm their aunt. I love them. But slowly, almost invisibly, it became routine. Now this is what my days look like. I wake up at 6 a.m., long before the kids stir, just to get 2 uninterrupted hours of work done. Around 7, Veronica pulls up outside my apartment, drops the kids off, barely slows the car. Sometimes she waves. Sometimes she doesn't even come to the door. By 7:30, I'm making breakfast, packing lunches, tying shoelaces. By 8:15, we're out the door, rushing to Ridgehorn Elementary. I drop them off, rush home, log into meetings already half exhausted. At 3:30, I'm back in the car, homework, math, reading, science projects, tears, frustration, snacks, dinner planning for 4 mouths that aren't mine. By the time the kids are bathed, fed, and asleep, it's usually 9:30 p.m. That's when my actual workday starts. I stay up until midnight, sometimes later, trying to meet deadlines I shouldn't have been missing in the first place. My team lead, Sharon, has been patient, but patience has limits. I can hear it in her voice now. The pauses, the careful phrasing. I'm slipping, and Veronica acts like this is normal. She never asks if I'm free, never checks my schedule. Never says thank you. She just assumes. Still, I kept telling myself it was temporary, that eventually she'd get her life together, that I was helping. That changed last Wednesday. She called me during lunch, right as I was debugging a nightmare of a deployment issue. "Lorraine," she said brightly, "you need to come to dinner at Mom and Dad's this Saturday. Everyone needs to be there." I rub my eyes. "Can't you just tell me now?" "No, it has to be in person." There was something in her tone, excited, almost smug. I didn't know it then, but that call was the last moment my life was still mine. Saturday came, and everything broke. I drove down to San Antonio that Saturday with a knot in my stomach I couldn't explain. It wasn't just the traffic or the long week I'd barely survived. It was the tone of Veronica's voice on the phone, bright, rehearsed, like she'd already practiced the reaction she expected from me. The closer I got to my parents' house, the heavier my chest felt, like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. When I pulled into their driveway just before 5 p.m., I immediately noticed an unfamiliar truck parked behind Veronica's silver Honda CR-V. A black Ford F-150, clean, polished, clearly not my dad's. Great, I thought. This must be the big news. Inside, the house smelled like barbecue brisket and nostalgia. My parents' living room looked exactly the same as it had my entire life. Same couch, same framed family photos, Same sense that time froze here, no matter how much I changed. Veronica was already there with the kids, all three unusually quiet. That alone should have warned me. Cameron sat stiffly on the couch, Lily pressed close to him, and Oliver clutched his stuffed dinosaur like a life raft. And then there was him, tall, broad-shouldered, late 30s maybe, sandy blonde hair, jeans, plaid shirt, confident posture that took up space without apology. "Lorraine!" Veronica jumped up the second she saw me, wrapping me in an over-enthusiastic hug. "You made it!" "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Hi, kids." They waved half-heartedly. "Oh," Veronica turned dramatically. "This is Blake." Blake stood and offered his hand. Firm grip, direct eye contact. "Nice to finally meet you," he said. "Veronica's told me a lot about you." I smiled politely, though something about that sentence made my skin prickle. My parents emerged from the kitchen moments later, my mom wiping her hands on her apron, my dad balancing a platter of brisket like it was sacred. Dinner was tense. The kids were silent. Veronica barely touched her food but kept smiling, glancing at Blake like they were sharing a secret. My parents were buzzing with barely contained excitement, though I couldn't figure out why yet. Halfway through the meal, I couldn't take it anymore. "Okay," I said, setting my fork down. "What's the announcement?" Veronica beamed. She reached for Blake's hand. "Well," she said, drawing it out, "Blake and I have some exciting news." She paused, eyes flicking around the table, soaking in the anticipation. "I'm pregnant, and we're getting married." The room went silent. Not shocked silence, not confused silence, joyful, explosive silence, like the breath before fireworks. My parents jumped up immediately. My mom shrieked. My dad clapped Blake on the back, already talking about wedding venues and baby showers, and how wonderful it was that Veronica was finally getting a fresh start. Blake smiled like a man who had just been handed exactly the life he wanted. I sat frozen. Pregnant. Married. Another child. Veronica was barely managing the three she already had. She worked part-time, lived off alimony, relied on me and our parents for money, childcare, stability. How was adding another baby supposed to fix anything? "Congratulations," I said finally, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "That's big." "Thank you." Veronica squeezed Blake's hand tighter. "But actually, there's more." My stomach dropped. She turned to me, casual, almost bored. "I'm going to need you to take the kids for a few months." I almost choked on my sweet tea. "What?" "Just temporarily," she said quickly. "During the pregnancy and then after the birth. Blake and I really need time to bond as a new family. I can't be stressed out chasing 3 kids while I'm pregnant." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "You want me to take your kids," I said slowly. "For months." "Yes," she replied, like it was obvious. "You work from home." My pulse roared in my ears. "Veronica," I said, my voice shaking. "I already take care of them. Every day. I'm exhausted." Her smile vanished instantly. "Wow," she snapped. "I can't believe how selfish you're being." "Selfish." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "I feed them. I help with homework. I buy their clothes. I pay for their activities. I rearrange my job around your life." "That's what family does," she shot back. "We help each other." I turned to my parents, desperate for backup. Instead, my mother frowned at me. "Lorraine," she said, "you don't have children. You don't understand how hard pregnancy and motherhood are." I stared at her. "I've been raising her kids for a year." "That's different," my father added. "Veronica is building a new life." "And what about mine?" I asked. No one answered. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "If you're going to have another baby," I said evenly, "you're going to do it without me." Veronica burst into tears. My parents started shouting. Words like ungrateful and duty flew across the table. I grabbed my purse and walked out. The drive back to Austin was a blur of anger, disbelief, and something colder settling into my bones. By the time I got home, my phone was already blowing up with messages. I didn't respond. For the first time in months, I turned my phone off and went to sleep. The silence that followed surprised me. I expected rage, accusations, guilt-tripping voicemails layered with my parents' disappointment and Veronica's tears. I expected retaliation so immediate and so loud that I'd regret ever standing up from that dinner table. Instead, nothing happened. No early morning drop-offs, no frantic texts, no just for a few hours calls. On Monday morning, I woke up at 7:30 a.m., not because I had to, but because my body finally allowed it. For the first time in over a year, I made coffee and drank it while it was still hot. I logged into work without scrambling. My inbox wasn't already screaming at me. I didn't have to calculate how many meetings I could half listen to while helping with math homework or tying shoelaces. The apartment felt quiet, too quiet at first. I kept expecting the doorbell, kept glancing at my phone, kept bracing myself for the sound of children I loved but had been drowning under. Nothing came. By Wednesday, I realized something terrifying. I was calm. I finished a project ahead of schedule. Then another. By Friday, Sharon messaged me directly. Noticed a big improvement this week. Great work. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. It wasn't improvement. It was normalcy. Something I hadn't experienced in so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like. That weekend, I did things I hadn't done in months. I went to dinner alone at Uchi, my favorite sushi place, without checking my phone every 2 minutes. I took a yoga class and stayed for the full hour. I slept past 8. I binge-watched an entire season of a show without interruption. I laughed out loud at one point. Then I cried. Not because I missed the kids. I still saw their faces everywhere. Cameron's quiet responsibility, Lily's questions, Oliver's stubborn determination. I cried because I finally understood how much of myself I'd lost. The week turned into 2. Still nothing. No kids, no parents, no sister. I started to believe, stupidly, that maybe this was over, that Veronica had finally realized she'd pushed too far, that my parents had cooled off and accepted that boundaries weren't betrayal. I should have known better. Saturday morning came quietly, too quietly. I was sleeping deeper than I had in months when loud knocking jolted me awake. Not the polite kind, not tentative, urgent, demanding. I squinted at my clock, 7 a.m. My heart immediately started pounding. I threw on a hoodie and padded downstairs, my bare feet cold against the tile. Through the peephole, I saw movement, small shapes shifting, shadows too low to the ground. I opened the door. 3 suitcases sat on my porch. Behind them stood Cameron, Lily, and Oliver. Cameron was holding Lily's hand tightly. Oliver clutched his stuffed dinosaur, Mr. Roar, against his chest. All 3 of them looked scared, confused, too composed in the way children get when they're trying not to panic. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice already breaking. Cameron swallowed. "Mom brought us," he said quietly. "She said to wait 5 minutes, then knock." The world tilted. "She left you here, alone?" "We weren't alone long," he rushed to say, protective even now, "but we didn't know what to do." I ushered them inside immediately, my hands shaking as I poured cereal and juice like my body was on autopilot. Then I called Veronica. The phone rang 10 times. She answered on the 11th. "What?" she snapped. "You left your kids on my porch," I said, my voice sharp with panic. "Unsupervised." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "It was 5 minutes. It's a safe neighborhood." "You could have gotten them kidnapped." "You were going to take them anyway," she said calmly. "I just saved us the argument." My vision went red. "Come pick them up. Now." "I can't," she replied. "Blake and I have reservations in Fredericksburg. We're leaving in an hour." Then she hung up. I stood there, staring at my phone, the weight of what she'd done crashing down on me. I called my parents next. "Lorraine," my mother said after I explained, "your sister is pregnant. She needs to focus on her relationship." "What about focusing on her children?" "This is temporary," my father added. "You're overreacting." I hung up. 20 minutes later, there was another knock. This one was measured, official. 2 uniformed police officers stood on my porch. "We received a call," one of them said carefully, that you were planning to abandon 3 children. I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. That's a lie. The officer glanced past me. Is it true you don't want to care for them? I didn't agree to this, I said. Their mother left them here and drove away. Cameron stepped forward before I could stop him. Mom told us to wait outside, he said quietly. The officers exchanged looks. I have proof, I said suddenly. 2 months ago, I'd installed Ring cameras after packages started going missing. I'd never mentioned them to my family. I pulled up the footage. You could clearly see Veronica unloading suitcases, talking to the kids, then driving away while they stood alone on the porch. One officer exhaled slowly. This is child abandonment, he said. I want to file a report, I said, and I want to contact CPS. That was the moment the calm ended, and the war began. The officers stayed for over an hour. They took statements from me first, then gently spoke to the kids one by one. I watched Cameron straighten his shoulders as if he were older than 9, answering questions carefully, trying to protect his siblings even now. Lily's voice trembled. Oliver crawled halfway into my lap without asking. Something inside my chest hardened as I watched. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't family drama. This was damage. We'll need to notify Child Protective Services, one of the officers explained calmly. Given the evidence, an investigation is required. I nodded. My hands were still shaking, but my voice was steady. They can stay with me for now, I said. I won't let anything happen to them. The officers left just after 9. I didn't even have time to sit down before my phone started ringing. Veronica. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, my parents. I didn't answer them either. At 11:30 a.m., the door burst open without a knock. Veronica stormed inside like a hurricane. Her hair was a mess. Her face was red. Her eyes were wild. You called the cops on me? She screamed. You left your children alone outside, I said flatly. They were fine. You didn't know that. They're my kids, she shrieked. You don't get to decide how I raise them. I stood between her and the living room. No, I said. You don't get to dump them here and disappear. I'm taking them home, she snapped, moving forward. No, you're not. She stopped short, staring at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Excuse me? The police and CPS said they stay here until this is resolved. Her face twisted with fury. You're stealing my children. You abandoned them. She lunged toward the kids who had frozen on the couch. I didn't move. You should leave, I said quietly. Veronica stared at me for a long moment, then turned and slammed the door behind her. 30 minutes later, my parents called. You've ruined everything, my mother screamed into the phone. Do you know what you've done? What she did, I replied evenly. Her kids could end up in foster care. No, I said. Their father has been contacted. Silence. Kevin? My dad asked cautiously. Yes, CPS called him. He wants custody. Another long pause. He's going to stop paying alimony, I added, and child support. My mother hung up. That evening, the kids watched cartoons on the couch like nothing had happened. They laughed, they relaxed. For the first time since I could remember, they didn't keep glancing at the door. The next morning, Patricia from CPS arrived. She was calm, direct, kind without being soft. She interviewed me first. How often are the children with you? She asked. 5 to 6 days a week, I answered honestly. Sometimes more. And financially? I cover most expenses. Clothes, school, activities. She nodded, taking notes. Then she spoke to the kids separately. When she came back, her expression had changed. From what I'm seeing, she said, you've been acting as their primary caregiver. Yes, I said, without ever agreeing to it. We'll be opening a case, she said, and contacting their father formally. That night, Kevin called me. I had no idea, he said quietly. I thought Veronica was taking care of them. She wasn't, I replied. But they're okay. They're safe. Thank you, he said, for everything. The investigation moved fast. Teachers were contacted, records pulled, text messages reviewed. The truth was no longer something Veronica could scream over. It was documented, and it was devastating. The kids stayed with me for the next month, and for the first time in years, they had stability. Dinner at the same time every night. Homework at the same table. Bedtime without fear of sudden changes. Cameron stopped apologizing for existing. Lily stopped asking if she was being bad. Oliver slept through the night. And me? I stopped feeling guilty. Because guilt only exists when you believe you're doing something wrong. I wasn't. I was protecting children who couldn't protect themselves. And the court date was coming. The court date arrived faster than I expected. Travis County Family Court sat downtown, all gray stone and heavy glass, sterile, impersonal, unforgiving. I took the day off work and brought Cameron with me. He'd asked to come, said he wanted to hear what the judge says. I didn't know whether to be proud or heartbroken that a 9-year-old felt that responsibility. The courtroom was full. Veronica sat at one table with Blake beside her, one hand protectively resting on her belly. She looked fragile on purpose, soft sweater, minimal makeup, eyes already shiny with unshed tears. My parents sat behind her, stiff and grim, refusing to look at me. Kevin sat across the aisle with his lawyer, posture straight, jaw set. He gave me a small nod when he saw me. Gratitude, resolve. CPS workers lined the back row. So did teachers from Ridgehorn Elementary. That should have told Veronica everything she needed to know. She testified first. "I love my children," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "I've always loved them. I just needed support during a difficult time." Her lawyer leaned into the narrative hard. Pregnancy, emotional stress, family helping family. Then Kevin testified. "I believed my ex-wife was the primary caregiver," he said calmly. "I now know that my sister-in-law, Lorraine, was raising our children while Veronica pursued a new relationship." When it was my turn, my hands shook, but my voice didn't. "I had the children most days of the week," I said. "I fed them, helped with homework, took them to school. Their mother would often not return for days." "Did you agree to this arrangement?" the prosecutor asked. "No," I said. "It just became expected." The teachers testified next. Every single one of them identified me as the primary contact. Emergency forms, conferences, permission slips. One teacher said quietly, "I thought Lorraine was their guardian." Veronica's face drained of color. Then came the footage. The judge, 3 children, suitcases, a car driving away. Silence filled the room. The ruling came a week later. "Full custody awarded to the father," the judge said firmly. "Supervised visitation for the mother, pending completion of parenting classes." Veronica sobbed. My parents looked stunned. Kevin exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. Cameron squeezed my hand. It was over, and somehow it was just beginning. The courtroom emptied slowly, like everyone needed time to absorb what had just happened. Veronica was the first to leave. She didn't look at me. Blake followed a few steps behind her, his hand hovering awkwardly near her back, unsure whether he was supposed to comfort her or distance himself from the disaster she'd just dragged him into. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look confident. He looked trapped. My parents stayed frozen in their seats long after the judge left. I stood when Cameron tugged gently at my sleeve. "Is it really over?" he whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "It's over." Kevin approached us near the exit. His eyes were red, but he was smiling, carefully, like he didn't want to celebrate too loudly in front of the kids. "Thank you," he said again, voice thick. "I know this cost you." "It was worth it," I replied. That night, when we got home, the kids didn't ask what would happen next. They didn't ask if their mom was angry or if they'd done something wrong. They ate dinner, did homework, and went to bed, like nothing earth-shattering had occurred. That's when I understood how exhausted they'd been by instability. Over the next few weeks, Kevin moved fast. He prepared bedrooms at his house in Westlake, real bedrooms, not temporary spaces. Cameron got his own room. Lily and Oliver shared one with bunk beds they couldn't stop talking about. The transition was smoother than anyone expected. The kids already trusted him. They already knew he showed up. They already knew what consistency felt like because they'd learned it with me first. Veronica spiraled. Through relatives, I heard her marriage was strained almost immediately. A newborn cried constantly. Money was tight now that child support had stopped. She'd been forced into a full-time job she hated. Blake, it turned out, hadn't signed up to raise a colicky baby without help. My parents stopped calling. Completely. At first, the silence hurt. Then it felt like relief. Without their voices in my ear telling me what I owed, I could finally breathe. The kids visited every couple of weeks. We went to parks, ate ice cream, did the fun things ants are supposed to do, not the exhausting ones no one should be forced into. One afternoon, sitting at Zilker Park, watching ducks paddle through the water, Cameron looked at me and asked, "Aunt Lorraine, are you happier now?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said honestly, "I am." He nodded, satisfied. That was enough. 6 months later, my life barely resembled the one I'd been surviving in. Without the constant chaos, my career exploded. Sharon promoted me to senior development lead, complete with a raise and more autonomy. I finally had time to take on complex projects, the kind I'd always wanted but never had the energy for. I joined a book club, took pottery classes, traveled on weekends without guilt. I even started dating again. I met Travis, another software engineer, at a tech conference in Austin. He listened, actually listened, when I told him about my family. "You basically raised 3 kids while working full-time," he said quietly. "That's not normal. That's heroic." I laughed. It shouldn't have been. A year after the trial, I bought my first house. A 3-bedroom place in Hyde Park with a backyard and a home office that felt like freedom. Kevin and the kids came to the housewarming. "This is amazing," Oliver shouted, running across the grass. Kevin pulled me aside. "You saved them," he said, "and you saved yourself." He was right. Standing up to Veronica had cost me my parents. It had cost me the illusion of a close-knit family, but it gave 3 children stability, and it gave me my life back. Some people will never forgive you for refusing to be used. That's okay, because sometimes the real happy ending isn't reconciliation. It's peace.